Alex Millaire, half of Moonfruits with my partner Kaitlin Milroy. We are a contemporary folk band singing in French and English on the traditional territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, also known as Ottawa.
I'm Kaitlin Milroy. I'm also one half of Moonfruits, a vocalist and parent and musician, touring artist, and really happy to have been part of the Slow Touring Project.
We have had this idea of heading to a specific festival and biking there. We wound up doing is renting 2 e-cargo bikes, and then we were off, the two of us, all of our gear and our toddler. It took 2 days to go out and 2 days to come back to the Blue Skies Music Festival in Clarendon Station. It's very humbling that it's, an hour and a half on the highway. It was way more challenging than I think either of us had bargained for, but great.
We had plotted a route on what were ostensibly like sort of bike or bike-friendly roads. We did do some training to be able to physically take this on. There was a big prep portion for this, a lot more than for any other initiative. We couldn't kind of jump into it. We had 2 travel days, 2 festival days, and then 2 travel days long. So yeah, 6 days. My bike was the toddler carrying bike. And so it had both saddlebags for gear, but then also a toddler seat behind me. So it had sort of a frame over top, kind of like a tent, but with windows.
My bike was very different. There's a large box, but essentially it had, my guitar, banjo, the pedals, all 3 of our suitcases.
You also did have merch and a soccer ball, as I recall.
Yes, that's it. In an ideal world, we would bike the route all the way there and all the way back before attempting it with an e-bike, specifically an e-cargo bike. We were using Google Maps. We got on a couple of roads where, it was mostly loose gravel and some pretty significant ruts. What we didn't know is that these bikes are essentially city bikes. There's this one road, Doran Road, which once we when we mentioned Doran Road on stage, they're like, oh no. To call it a road is generous. I probably pushed this 300-pound bike like 30 or 40 times each way.
When it's sort of physically demanding, it can be both very freeing and also you can need to play some psychological games with yourself to kind of get there. We encountered a lot of physical obstacles getting out of the city because we had a network of bike paths, which we use frequently as people who live in Ottawa, but there was a lot of construction happening. We were frustrated, I think, a bit by our city. You arrived somewhere and there's some sandbags and a bunch of cones and you just got to figure it out. And all of a sudden the terrain is different. But once we got onto the old rail trail bed, things really smoothed out. In terms of what we would do differently next time, some kind of scouting. I think what would be ideal, what I can see like 10 years in the future is that, regionally, people who are interested in doing this kind of travel, I think it would be great to have a network, a bicycle touring network, where you're sharing information about routes, about road conditions, about weather, and also you have a network of places to stay, as well as venues that are equipped. I could see it really becoming like its own kind of touring network. A lot of time is required, and that's not feasible for the fees that are currently available for performing artists.
Some of the most beautiful times, I would say, were on the trails. The world was alive around us. Our ears were like humming with, the sounds of like insects, birds. We passed cows. It was quite something to understand that in just this short distance, there was all of this life that you see none of on the highway. The highway is a highly industrial experience.
Seeing like marshland, for example, being aware that it's even there, smell, sound, change in humidity, like you can feel all those things on the bike. It's not every driver that's making space for us on the road, just feeling that fear and that hyper alert awareness of how fast, heavy, dangerous, and violent, frankly, cars are.
Worth noting that the rentals were not inexpensive. It was $800 for this like week-long rental for 2 bicycles. If you consider that plus the cost of a hotel both ways, your fee would really have to represent those expenses and the time spent biking and not doing other work. It's what we would prefer, I think, to do more often than not, but the costs are really not insignificant.
As working class performers, artists, musicians, like there's a lot of things that have to do with slow touring that are more ideal, but that we often either can't or don't make time for reasons that largely boil down to money. That's the special thing about this pilot project, is that it's given us the opportunity to try new things. But even while you're participating in something that is novel and that is supported, there are still all these other aspects of your life that are not. Even if people within the industry want to seek change, we all live in the same world. I think what we do matters, and I think it's possible to change. But these forces are so big that, you know, it's hard sometimes to see through that looking glass and just to see these possibilities as like, I can immediately go and implement this.
As an independent musician, the asks that you have a right to are generally small. You know, your average hospitality writer will by and large not be respected by most festivals. Moving the conversation forward to like a green writer, it would be a big step for artists, but also for festivals to take on. Oh, you want to come and bike to this festival, so you're going to need 2 more nights of accoms that are paid, right? A lot of presenters are themselves also feeling the squeeze. Building the road towards a less precarious place is important, but the materials to build it are very scarce, right? It's like, oh, wow, you're doing a slow tour. Good for you. I guess you don't like money or living well. This is essentially what the industry is telling us.
There's reconciling your initial imagining of what it could be with what you could actually feasibly do. And then there's the future imagining of like, okay, inspired by that, now what do I want to, because like, I think at first, like I have spreadsheets that are like bike tour of the Gatineau Hills and the Ottawa Valley. And I had like 15 places we could play, you know, that were within a bikeable distance. And eventually we had to sit down and be like, okay, we can't actually book a tour by bike, but we have this offer to play Blue Skies. It's within the range. You know, we could maybe do that. We learned a lot in like just such a small, concentrated time. And I'm grateful that we didn't have like another week and a half of cycling after that weekend, because it would have been, I think, just too much. Truly, now it lets us, with a bit of experience, maybe try something a little bit more.